What's good, everybody? It's your boy Kev. Welcome back to the channel. I wanted to do something. Now, I had Chris on here the last time, and me and the guys were thinking about doing a couple of more, but I wanted to do some reaction videos to our guy, MrBallen. This guy has a very, very good talent of telling stories. So I definitely wanted to react to some of his videos. Now, these are joints that happened months ago, you know what I mean? Like, this happened a good while ago. So without a further ado, I'll just let it get into MrBallen doing his thing.
Today, I'm going to share 3 progressively more bizarre missing person cases. But before we get into those stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place, because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's of interest to you, please tuck the like button into their bed and read them a bedtime story, and then when they ask you for a glass of water, say, no problem, go get them a cup of water, and then when you come back, dump it on their stupid
This
face.
introduction
Also,
is
please
always
subscribe to our
crazy.
channel and turn on all notifications
So
you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's stories.
So for copyright, I can't have this part playing, and so yeah, that's the only reason why I'm muting it right here, right now. The Way.
On the evening of June 28, 1997, an 83-year-old woman named Leila Howard turned up the radio in the living room of her small home in Texas, and then she took a seat next to her husband, Raymond, on the couch. This was a song that both of them loved, and in the past, Leila knew her husband would have swooped her up and begun dancing with her right away. But Raymond was now 88 years old.
That's the type of love I want to do.
Surgery, and they both were planning to go to bed.
I'm the type of person like that. The song come on, I'm singing. I'm singing to my love.
They were going to go to the Pioneer Day Music Festival, which is an annual fiddling festival located about 15 miles away from where Leila and Raymond lived, in the town of Salado, Texas. Leila and Raymond attended this festival basically every year. And so even though Raymond right now was a bit fragile from his surgery and his advanced age, you know, the couple had not even considered missing it. Leila's son, Hal, had tried to persuade Leila to let him, Hal, drive the couple to the music festival.
Makes sense.
But Leila said no, because Leila and Raymond were both fiercely independent and wanted to be in control of their lives, which included driving to and from this festival. Also, Leila had talked about maybe going someplace else after the festival ended with Raymond, kind of spontaneously just driving out and doing something. And so she really wanted to have her own car in case she did want to do that. And so
okay, listen, to my parents who are hopefully going to get up to that age, God willing, if you ever decide to go on a road trip, one of us are coming. I got 3 other siblings, so it's 4 in total. One of us is going with y'all. Y'all not going anywhere by yourselves. Who y'all think y'all are? Y'all ain't grown. Please.
So after a few minutes, Leila and Raymond's favorite song came to an end, and the DJ hopped back on the radio and began talking about the weather and the traffic. And at that point, Raymond and Leila, they stood up from the couch, they took each other's hands, and they walked upstairs to go to bed. The next morning, so June 29th, Leila and Raymond walked out the front door of their house, and they walked down to their driveway.
That's
where
a nice
their
looking
Oldsmobile
car.
Was parked.
You see that,
Leila
John?
helped Raymond get into
Classic.
the passenger seat, and then Leila took her spot in the driver's seat. And then a few moments later, after they were all buckled in and situated, Leila fired up the car, backed out the driveway, and began driving. That evening, Leila's son, Hal, decided to swing by Leila and Raymond's house to check in on them and see how the festival went. And so at about 5 p.m., Hal got to their house, and right away when he pulled up, he noticed that Leila and Raymond's car, the Oldsmobile, was not in the driveway. And so Hal thought that was pretty odd, because by now they should have been back from the festival. In years past, they would always get home by about 3 p.m. at the absolute latest, because they didn't like staying out late, and so it just seemed odd that they were not back by now. But at the same time, Hal knew that Leila had been thinking
because she
about
said they
out and
might
doing
go
something
somewhere else, so that
spontaneous
makes sense.
after the event was over. And so he thought, you know, maybe his mom and Raymond were out driving around somewhere and they'd be back later. But just for good measure, Hal did park the car and he walked up to the front door of the house and he did knock. But when there was no answer, he thought, you know what, I'll just go home and come back in a few hours and check in on them at that point.
Makes
and
sense.
So a few hours later at 8 p.m., Hal drove back to Leila and Raymond's house. And when he got there, he saw, their car was still not back yet. And so now Hal's starting to feel pretty worried, and so he parked the car, he walked up to the front door, he did knock, there was no answer, and so he pulled out his set of keys, he opened up the door, and he walked inside. Now, as soon as he was in the house, nothing looked out of place. It actually looked very organized and clean like it normally was. But as he walked around looking for some sign of where Leila and Raymond were, all he could find was on one of the beds, there were all these neat stacks of clothes that were laid out as if somebody was getting ready to pack but didn't finish packing. And so it just seemed like something's off here, something's not right. This doesn't seem like they just went out and did something spontaneous. Something must have happened at the festival.
They keep thinking they're young. That's what's wrong with you old people. Y'all keep thinking y'all young. Y'all grown. Y'all get to do whatever you want.
Leila and Raymond missing, he actually began calling news stations and telling them, can you please put out my mom and Raymond's picture because they're older and they're missing. I need your help. And in fact, that night, those TV stations did begin putting out all these reports about how Leila and Raymond were missing and for people to be on the lookout for them and their car. At the same time, the police immediately launched an investigation, and they quickly discovered that Leila and Raymond had never even made it to the music festival. They never got there. And then when the police drove the route that Leila would have taken to get to the music festival,
get there?
They didn't find any car accidents or anything unusual on the route that would indicate that they got into some trouble or something. You know, they checked their phone records.
See, that's the problem right there. Because you said you wanted to go on this trip with just you and your hubby. That makes sense. That's cool. You know, couple goals. You know what I mean? But you never made it to the event. Now, mind you, I think he said his father was like 80 something. Yeah, at that age, I don't think, no. At that age, you be driven.
And Leila and Raymond had called nobody. There was no action on their credit cards, and so they hadn't bought anything. And the police would send out all these missing person reports to police officers all over the state of Texas, and nobody reported seeing anything or hearing anything. That is, until 3 days later on July 2nd. On that night, a police officer in a little town in Arkansas, located 500 miles away from where Leila and Raymond lived, this police officer was driving down the road when he spotted an Oldsmobile that was driving with its lights off. And so the officer pulled the car over and he ran the license plate, and it came back as belonging to Leila and Raymond. But you got to remember that this police officer was in Arkansas, and so he had not received any updates about this missing couple. All those TV broadcasts and all the missing person alerts that were getting sent out all over the place, those were really only happening in the state of Texas. And so this officer has no clue that Leila and Raymond are
responsive, reliable.
All right. Commercials. That is a problem right there within itself, that the officer pulled them over but didn't know who they were because he didn't get the information. I don't know. I don't know if I like that, because like everything that's going on in Texas is going on, but not in Arkansas. So how would they know that, these people are missing? How would they know? How would they know?
But he runs the plate, he sees it belongs to Leila and Raymond, and he goes up to the driver's side window and he looks inside and he sees Leila and Raymond. Leila's driving, Raymond's in the passenger seat, and they look like a really happy older couple. And the officer would say to Leila, hey, you're driving with your lights off. And Leila would say, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. You know, we were driving in Texas and we got lost and I just didn't notice. I'm really sorry. The officer believed her and felt like these were good people who just made an honest mistake. And so he just flicked her lights on and said, I'm going to give you a warning. No big deal, no ticket, but be careful with your lights. You got to make sure those are on at night. And Leila said, thank you very much. You know, of course, I'll be very careful with my lights. And then actually the officer gave Leila directions on how to get back to Texas from Arkansas. And then he got back in his cruiser, and then he watched as Leila and Raymond pulled onto the main road and then disappeared into the darkness. The police officer in Arkansas who pulled them over would eventually put it together who he had pulled over. And at that point, Arkansas would get in on the search for Leila and Raymond. But for the next 2 weeks, despite having both states aggressively searching for this couple, nobody could find them. That is until July 12th, so that's 10 days after Leela and Raymond got pulled over by that cop in Arkansas.
Oh my God.
On that day, these two young boys were walking by a small stream in a town called Hot Springs, Arkansas, when they began to smell a terrible smell. They would end up telling their parents, who would come back to the stream and they'd smell it too, and they would end up alerting the police, and the police would come out and they would search that entire area, and they would find Leela and Raymond's
Lord have mercy.
at the base of a 25-foot cliff, and inside the vehicle were Leela and Raymond, and they were both deceased. It looked very much like Leela and Raymond had driven off this cliff and they had landed down below, and that's what killed them. But when investigators went up to the top of that cliff, there were no skid marks on the cliff itself, which meant Leela, who was driving, never hit the brakes as she went over the cliff. Nobody knows why Leela and Raymond abruptly left their town and drove hundreds of miles into Arkansas instead of going to their favorite music festival, although their family members have speculated that it could be because Leela and Raymond had declining cognitive function, and so they basically didn't know what was going on, and that's why it happened. But the reason this story is in this video is because this story about Leela and Raymond is what inspired a very, very famous song from the late 1990s. It's called The Way by Fastball, and for copyright reasons,
I remember the
we
group,
can't play
not
it
the
for
song.
you. But I'll sing you a line and see if you can remember this song. Where were they going without ever knowing the way? Anyone can see the road that they walk on is paved in gold. It's always summer, you'll never get cold. You'll never be hungry, you'll never be old and gray. Boom, there you go. If you know the song, now you know it's got a pretty intense backstory.
Wow. I mean, for sure, they got a hit out of it, I guess. I never heard that song before. But my thing is, though, is that old people should never be going anywhere by themselves. Like, we talking about a field trip? Absolutely not. You guys are not going anywhere. This is a message to my parents. And if you are a child and you have older parents, my parents are in their 60s, so they're not old. And, you know, I pray that they make it to that age. That's a beautiful, you know, a beautiful age to get to. But to my parents, you are not going anywhere without one of us. If you're going to a concert and it's not in our state, one of us is just going to have to chaperone. It's okay. Don't think that you're a burden. Like, I'm pretty sure, you know, that's not what was said, but like, you know, we're old, you know, we want to go out, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to have our freedom. It's the same thing as when we were kids, you know, teenagers, we want our freedom. Give us our space. But situations like this happen. They're older. How do you go from Texas and the destination isn't far from where you are, that's in your state, and you end up in Arkansas? Where did you get lost at? At that point, you don't need to. I already told my kids. My oldest one, she'll know. My youngest one, she won't know. But I told my oldest one, and I'm gonna remind them. And I always told myself, when I get at the age of forgetting things repeatedly, like not just like, oh, I walked in the kitchen. What am I doing in the kitchen? Like, I know I came in here for something to either eat or drink, but I can't remember exactly what it was. Or going to the dining room, I can't remember what it was that I came in here for. But, you know, when I get to that age, I'm not driving. I'll be Mr. Daisy. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that was one video from MrBallen. So please go to his channel, like and subscribe to his channel. I think he also needs to put out an album. That was a good with it, acapella. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead, MrBallen. But as always, I've been Kev. You've been you. Like, subscribe to his channel. Like, subscribe to this channel. You've been you. Let's stay in tune.